every Saturday night, perhaps every Friday night, and talk about Dual Universe. Go over the changes in the game, or maybe not changes, but go over the responses that we've gotten from the developers about the game, go over our opinions of them, maybe touch on popular forum posts throughout the week, et cetera, et cetera. Really, it's just a casual chat room where people can talk about Dual Universe. And with that, I think that I will let everybody introduce themselves.
Okay, then. I guess I shall start. I am Master Dreadstone, or Master Dread as my forum name goes, and I am the faction leader of Dual Universe Alliance, or DUA. Alternatively, its formal name is Diverse Unified Alliance.
I guess I'm the next. My name is Darius Sanguininatus, Sanguna for short. I'm the leader of the Terran Union. And I'm from Germany, as you can hear.
Who are we missing? I think
Scruggs, would you like to go?
Sure, that's fine. So yeah, I'm Scruggs. That's also my forum name, and I'm not really lead of anything. I'm just here for fun and here to talk about the game.
All right, and I am Neapolitan. Just switched my name from being Safi, if you see me on the forums. And I'm a part of a community organization, Cinderfall Syndicate. Just trying to bring players together in the game. Yeah. Hope to grow this community to new heights.
One person is missing, as far as I can see. So,
who are we missing?
you.
Me? Oh,
Yeah.
of course.
So no introduction from you.
Okay, well, I'm Yamamushi. I'm fairly new to the game. I found out about the game through the E3 trailer, and I've been posting on the forums for the past couple of weeks. And yeah, I'm not running any organizations or anything special in the game. I just like to keep up on the forums, stay involved.
Don't lie, Yamamushi. You're a big part of this community. Everyone is.
Yeah, I like to write angry responses to people and then erase them and come up with a more diplomatic way of responding to people.
Don't we all?
All right, I guess we're going to move on to talking about what Dual Universe is.
Yeah, I think we kind of did that out of order, but we should probably talk about what Dual Universe is and why we're here. And who among us has been here the longest? I think it's Safi, right?
It is.
Yeah.
So you should do us the honors of introducing Dual Universe.
Great, I love that. Dual Universe is the builder game that you've always wanted, but no developer ever had the guts to try to make. And if you take decent aspects about Minecraft and decent aspects about EVE Online, and you merge the two together, that is, I believe, the objective goal of Dual Universe. And the community, we've been learning new things all the time as information is slowly released. We'll be able to terraform, I believe, 2 kilometers into a planet. They have some interesting things on voxel management and stuff that we'll get into later. And you can build your own empire. There'll be territory units, claim land. You want to build a skyscraper, you want to build a hut. Those will probably be some huts will probably be the first thing all of us live in to survive the night. We know there'll be combat in the game, not just building, but building will be a huge focus of the game, and resource collection. I believe the combat is intended to be lock-on, possibly tab targeting, but we're still waiting more details on full scope of what combat will be like. I believe that's about what Dual Universe is in a nutshell right now.
Yeah, I think for new people or just people passing by trying to figure out what Dual Universe is, I think the first thing that comes to mind is like Space Engineers. Sandbox games that have voxels, things like Empyrean, Space Engineers, in a way, Minecraft. EverQuest Landmark is also something that comes to mind when you think of the voxel engine. And I guess the way I would describe Dual Universe is like EverQuest Landmark meets space without the influence of Daybreak.
I think we should also mention this building and PvP not separated. It's more incorporated. PvP players will need builders to build their ships, and builders will need PvP players to protect them, because the whole world will PvP or the most part of the world.
Yeah, I think there were several topics actually this week brought up in the forums, and I guess to get some background into that, the forums are where most of the discussions about Dual Universe are taking place. Otherwise, there's like some whispers happening on Reddit and the Dual the Game subreddit. For the most part, everybody is talking in the forums, and although NovaQuark, the company behind Dual Universe, doesn't necessarily respond to every single forum post, it's still fun, or informational at least, to get the community's feedback about certain ideas. And of course, PvP was one of the big topics this week, and I'm assuming that it had a lot to do with the news about the targeting system. So I guess I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but PvP definitely discussed this week. But I think we should actually talk about the targeting system first, and how the topic of the targeting system even came up, because that will help us lead into PvP and kind of imagine what PvP might look like. Does anybody remember when the targeting system topic came up? I believe it was during the interview with the XP gamers.
I believe it was.
Yeah, and I think that the main reason why they were talking about the targeting system in general is because they were wanting to do. I mean, they want to do PvP, but they want to do it in a way that they can actually really do it, because doing a first-person type PvP is not something that at this point they could do with the way the servers are, or with the way that they have everything set up, because of how they were trying to have everybody on the same server, or not the same server, sorry, the same, it's a single shard universe, so everybody's existing at the same time. It wouldn't really be feasible for them to do a first-person shooting type system, because the further away you were getting, the more basically it's not as synchronized with you the further away you get, is at least what I think that they were saying in that interview.
Yeah, he kind of touched on the server architecture, and I guess the biggest focus about Dual Universe, or the biggest feature, is its ability to host a single shard persistent universe. And in order for them to do that, they had to develop a whole new network architecture that would effectively, in real time, load balance um, players across different servers. So in theory, there could be 1,000 servers sitting in their data center, but visually, as you're playing the game, it's all being glued together. So, if you're looking, a couple miles off in the distance, if you're on a planet and you're looking a couple miles off in the distance and you see somebody, there's a chance that that person may be in a different server instance. And because of that, the things that you may see them doing may actually be delayed. So, you may see somebody, a couple miles away walking across a field or something, and as you see it, you're going to see, it won't look like lag to you, but as you see the actions taking, as you see the animations from your perspective, the actions may have already taken place, a couple of seconds in the past. And that's, exponential based on the distance you are from a given person. If you're looking at a planet that's across the solar system, or if you're watching ships depart a planet, they may have left there, 20 seconds ago. So it's like you're looking into the past. And the reason for that is the network architecture, which, as you touched on, Scruggs, is also the reason for the PvP system that they've kind of envisioned for the game.
Yeah, it's definitely, they stated that it wasn't the one that they really wanted for the game. It's just the one that they could implement at this point, just because of the way things work with the server architecture.
And I'm not totally opposed to the targeting system that they described. I think the analogy he made is like something similar to the EVE Online's targeting system. Instead of a targeting system kind of like Elite Dangerous or Star Citizen, where you just fly around and you shoot, and otherwise they call it fire and forget. You fire your gun and you pull out of the way, and you're doing dogfighting and all that cool stuff. Instead, it's more of a combat system like EVE Online, where you lock on to somebody, you fire your weapon, and then based on your skills, and based on the stats of the ship, and all these other things that come into play, that will determine if your shot actually hits. But other than that, we don't have a lot more detail as to how exactly the PvP works. But sorry to kind of segue off there. But yeah, what are everybody's thoughts about PvP? Is it necessarily a bad thing? Is it just something we have to work around?
I don't think it's a bad thing, but it's for fighters. It's not that optimal, I would say. Maybe in the future, as the technology advanced, there will be possibilities for FPS system for fighters, but for large ships with turrets, I don't think it's really a bad thing.
No, as far as large-scale battles go, I don't think it's a big problem until you get more into long-distance targeting, and maybe targeting fighters that are moving besides you. That could cause some potential problems unless they calculate it in a very interesting and unconventional manner. But yeah, it definitely is an interesting mechanic that we'll either have to work around or we'll have to actually just plan ahead, or we can just see if they do something about it to make it feasible.
Neil
Yeah,
here.
and I think
Or
sorry.
otherwise known as Safi. I think that while some people will be disappointed that it's not FPS style, I think that it's a lot of people do enjoy the strategic aspect of planning your ship and trying to decide the outcome of a battle before you even get to Twitch-based environment.
I think one of the concerns that comes along with it is that when people think about, voxel ships and ships that are fully destructible, they have a hard time connecting that to like, how does that actually work in the realm of an EVE Online type targeting system? If you are just targeting a ship from, a couple hundred kilometers away or whatever, and you fire your shot, you can't really determine where exactly that shot is going to land. Is the voxel damage going to be random on the ship? Is there even going to be voxel damage? Which it sounds like there will be because there are allusions to being able to board ships in the dev blog, although it's pretty clear in the dev blog that, even those features might not even be there at release. But that's definitely, I think, a reason people are concerned is, if I shoot a ship, I want to be able to know where my shots are going to land. I don't want to just fire and be at the whim of a RNG system as to where my shots are going to land.
Right, I think that's one of the biggest aspects about combat. We still need more info on if in fact damage is dealt in a voxel by voxel basis, or if somehow when you complete a ship, the game will know that, and it'll work more like Eve, where you just deal raw damage, or if it's like you say, on voxel.
I would like, or I guess a possible solution to the problem, or a possible way it could be implemented that I posted about in the forums this week was that we know that when we are building ships, there are pieces of the ship that we will not be able to design ourselves, such as the engines, the reactors, cargo containers, perhaps even the cockpit, and various other components, as they're called, that go into making your ship. Now you can like design your floor and design the interior and exterior of your ship as you please, but otherwise, there are components that you can't design. They're going to be provided to us. And I like the idea of being able to target components. If I'm flying by, I should be able to scan a ship, see the components you've installed in a ship, and be able to target them such that, if I aim at your reactor, that's where the damage should be centralized to, or at least, yeah, I guess I haven't put too much thought into it, but, if I were targeting somebody's turrets that were on top of their ship, I would expect that the damage be distributed around that turret as opposed to some random place on the ship.
Indeed. It's a good idea to have a general targeting system in any game, as we know. Even in some basic space simulation games or in some space fighting simulation games, you will normally see some way to target a ship, whether it be specific components in a ship or the actual ship itself, entities, etc. There usually is always a way to target a ship. And so the vital aspect is to actually be able to target, lock on, and then fire. In this case, at least.
Yes, I agree with this. And I think we could add at this point also technology, because it is not necessarily every scanner can target every component in a ship. Maybe there are countermeasures from the enemy that hinder the scanner or something like this. So basically, it will depend on the technology level of the opposing factions, if they are able to target certain components in inside of the ship.
Yeah, and I think your skill level in using components, like, if you don't have any skills in using a scanner, there's a good chance you're not going to pick up anything with it, regardless of how good the scanner is.
This is Scruggs. Do you think that even, like, I like that idea. So like if you're in a ship and let's say your ability to work a shield or something on your ship is pretty high, and the person who's targeting you is essentially a brand new player, or doesn't have the skill to actually scan certain parts of your ship, that maybe the most they could hope to do is random damage, if even they could target you. And I'm kind of wondering if that would work, or if that would be, because it kind of seems like that. I'm not sure exactly how that would work, but it seems like a fun idea, I guess.
I think there will be a certain level of basic information determined in first place. So you should be able to target the ship basically because of the fact that you can see it. And
Good point.
and it's more about the inner components.
Yeah, I mean, I want to be able to target a reactor. If I'm going up against a capital ship, I want to be able to be strategic in what I'm attacking. Like, I could take out the engines, and that might immobilize a capital ship, and that could be a strategy.
It just
But
kind of
like many things
shows.
with the game, we know very little about any of the mechanics.
Yes, of course. But it does go to show that this game is going to be definitely based around strategy, construction of details, all that, instead of just a players get together and just do random sort of things. It's actually going to be planned out and strategical in some sort of scale.
Absolutely. I think, off this topic of PvP while we're on it, just going to segue a little bit. I think there'd definitely be groups of people who are pirates or otherwise just gankers, just people that fly around to do nothing but uh, pirate freighters
USOB.
or kill people or kill noobs or whatever. Just people that want to do nothing but kill other people. But I think by and far the majority of the PvP will have some sort of strategic element behind it. Like there will be a reason why PvP occurs in some places more than others.
Yes, as forementioned in one of the dev blogs, it's mentioned that PvP may take place to occur for territorial control, to destroy maybe supply lines, communications, and in general, this seems like it would be more of a chance for building up a faction or a group of people rather than just a random element in any sort of manner. So it kind of seems like they're implying that you're going to have a reason to do PvP. And because of that, you're going to have to think about what you do.
Yeah, I think we still have to see a lot of the mechanics that are going to go in. We have to see what their plans are for the long term. There's all sorts of other trivial questions that come into play, as to how it will affect PvP. If I'm designing ships, uh, how much of what am I trying to say here? How much influence do builders have on PvP? If they're designing ships, is the code that they're writing and where they're placing engines and the quality of the components they're using, et cetera, et cetera. How big of an impact does that play in PvP?
Well, I would hope it would have a big impact, but I mean, as of right now, it's, since everything is still where it's at, I think PvP is, like they were saying, not really one of the huge things they're focusing on yet for the alpha. They're focusing mostly on the building aspect of it right now. So any in-depth, detailed PvP questions that we have, like they'll give us a general outline, but I don't think they're going to go too far in depth with that right now, since they're still fleshing out the other aspects of the game.
Yeah, I think this is definitely where community feedback in the forums is important, for people to debate and to tell Nova Cork what we want. but keep it within the bounds of what the engine is actually capable of.
That's one of the things that I really like about the forum as well. Is like when we're in there, it seems, I haven't really been a huge part of other communities before, and in that, it just seems like in this community at least, they're actively listening towards some of the feedback that we have, and that's part of what I like about this forum, and part of what I like about Dual Universe is it seems like the developers are actually paying attention, and they are taking some of the things into consideration. I mean, they're even answering some of our questions, one question a day, which is kind of cool. Which I guess we'll talk on that a little bit later, but they're active in the community with us, which is cool because it makes it seem like, okay, they're open to feedback and they kind of want our ideas as long as it fits within the scope of the game, and they're there to tell us kind of what makes sense and what doesn't within the boundaries of what they want to create.
And I realized, or as I was reading an interview that their CEO did with gamerpros.co, if you read the interview, it kind of feels like he's actually read some of the responses that we've put in the forum. Specifically the section in the Q&A that he did with GamerPros that talks about PvE environments, and what that will look like, what the limitations of PvE are, what PvE actually means in the scope of a game like Dual Universe. And he touched on some things that was very familiar to the feedback that had happened in the forums, even without InQ asking the question, just us debating the question at all. It kind of feels like that we've had an impact on their development path. Specifically about PvE, I think the question that came up this week, I may have even posted the question, which was, do people feel more comfortable with a game that has full open world PvP, or do they want the ability to construct PvE zones that are otherwise invulnerable? And the debate went back and forth for it. Of course, there's quite a large voice in the community that was concerned that, if people are in the game, if they buy the game and they subscribe to it, specifically to be builders, if they go into the game thinking it's like Minecraft or EverQuest Landmark, people want to build things without it being destroyed, which is certainly something, to take in mind. But on the other hand, if you enable the players to create PvE areas that are otherwise invulnerable, then it kind of throws off the balance of PvP. And that goes all the way up the pyramid, things like alliance warfare and corporate warfare. All sorts of things I think could be negatively affected if there were areas in the game that players could build easily that were otherwise invincible. And the way that he responded to the Gamer Pros question, actually, I'll just pull up the question that he responded to.
I want to say that it's not only affects the PvP.
He says the question that was posed to him was, do you plan to introduce any kind of combat elements in PvP? Combat is a big part of many MMOs, and players love the opportunity to fight each other. And his response was, yes, of course. It's a question of PvP and implementing it, a point that's very dear to us. We're thinking of safe zones, one that would be around the ARC ship, the main player starting point, as it's the ship that brought you to where you are. And he follows up with, basically, there will be a 20-kilometer safe area where nothing can happen to you. We will be creating other safe areas, and players would be able to create their own grounds that aren't indestructible, as long as players have the resources and wealth that can make a zone that's near impenetrable. And he says, think about the United States. It's not indestructible. Can you imagine the whole world wanting to invade the United States? There's enough security, though, military and whatnot, that prevents that. In this game, it'd be a similar point. So just based on that, the answer that he gave there, it kind of felt like one of the responses that showed up in the forum, which was, if you want a PvE area, Sure, it's really easy to have a PvE area if you are willing to defend that area. That's definitely a direction that I like, that, the game is full PvP, but you're more than welcome to live in areas that are defended by, alliances. You should have to go to players and ask for that protection. You shouldn't just be able to build bubbles where you can play the game without ever having to interact with people.
What I want to say is it affects not only the PvP aspect, it affects also the society, because if you have only PvE or PvP free zones, how would you be able to yes to to uh, to the basic player behavior to control this? You cannot, you aren't able to shoot them or to punish them in a certain way.
Yeah, I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking here. What are everybody else's thoughts?
So so Darius, your concern is basically that if we have a PvE zone that is completely non-PvP, but you have somebody who's not following the community rules, that you're not able to actually do anything about it, right?
Yes.
Okay. So that's, I mean, I definitely can see that being somewhat of an issue, but I don't think it would be I mean, this is just my own opinion. I don't think it would be something that would happen too frequently. And if you have an area where they can't just go through and grief people, they may be rude in the community, but as long as they're not able to completely destroy something in that area, then I think that, people that are not really getting along, there may be a way to, have them removed from that area, or have it so that, and this is all just, my own speculation, I don't really know for sure, but I was assuming that they were going to have some kind of tagging system where if you're, not, if you're not following the rules of the area that you're in, that you could be, essentially tagged as hostile in that area. But again, I'm not sure.
Maybe a possibility is also that the organization or the player who has placed that PvE zone will will be able to um, to actually perform PvP inside of this zone, or would have certain rights.
The way I understand it is that the whole game is going to be PvP. The only thing that makes areas PvE are when you actually set, the parameters, like, these people are hostile, and then your weapons or your turrets or your automated defenses or whatever would then kick in to prevent the people that you don't want coming into your zone. So otherwise you would be able to, start shooting and whatever. There's still PvP everywhere. It's just that PvE is otherwise an illusion because of the military force that you have defending your area.
Um, yes, that's right. But in the forum was mentioned a certain thing called archification that would that would create a real PvE area without PvP. And it's my concern.
So I think the way they
Yeah.
were describing the archification process, or at least what I was looking at, and it's a topic post, it says dev blog territory control. So what they were talking about in that is that basically they wanted to make, because archification is not going to be something that's easily accessible. At least that's what they're intending for it to be, something that is not easily accessible. But if you have that, it's basically what they're trying to say is the reason why they want to implement something like that, or at least from the post that I was reading here, the reason they would want to implement something like that is because if you are being chased by someone who is, attempting to kill you, and you make it back to that safe zone, then essentially, the PvP person who's chasing you has lost. If it's a prey predator type thing, it's like if the prey makes it home, essentially, the predator can't get to them anymore. Likewise, if they manage to take them out before they get to that safe zone, then they were kind of looking at it in that aspect, that PvE players who do not want to be hunted should have a place that they can go that isn't just one location in one specific spot in the entire world, that they should have at least a couple of options, to get away from something like that. Just like in a real life situation, you have places you can go to get away from something like that. Or in terms of like predator prey, people not so much.
And there's always a balance with those things, right? Because I mean, you don't want to create a system where somebody can go out and otherwise be a brat and abuse people, and then be able to run back into their safe zone over and over. Whether it's like timers that prevent people from being able to come back into the PvE zone after a certain time, or I don't know really. I don't know how to solve that.
Yeah, let us first see if archification is really a thing.
I think it should be. I think that players should be able to build arcs or perhaps discover them, but I think it should take a lot of time and resources to create something like that. And I suppose this is a nice point in time to kind of segue into a different topic, kind of bouncing around here. Actually, we have a question on Twitch, so let's hit up this question before we change topics. This is from Astrophil, and he asks, or he says, archification is a pretty fragile topic. Personally, I don't agree with it because it can be abuse. Massive swaths of land that are archified and completely inaccessible, essentially. But as with anything, there's always abuse.
Neo here. I just wanted to chime in that I think they're still trying to find that careful balance between over, PvE-ification of the game, because I think they want the economy to have a good flow to it. If you have too much safe zone, the economy will get wrecked. If you have too much PvP, you might not have such a great economy.
Yeah, always a balance. But to kind of segue here off the arc topic, I guess we should have said what the arc was first. A little late for that. But to just touch on the topic, the backstory of the game here is that I think, and I'm probably wrong in how much time has passed, but effectively around our time, sometime in the late or early 21st century, scientists discovered that there's a neutron star that is heading towards a collision course for Earth. And the only way to save humanity is to build these giant spaceships they called arcs that are vehicles capable of traveling faster than light, in which they would take, millions of humans and freeze them and put them in the arcs and then blast them off into, all the different corners of space such that they could, awaken several hundred years later or thousands of years later, and be able to repopulate the universe, or humanity would be able to carry on. And so where the game starts, or where the idea, or from what I've gathered, the game will start with everybody is going to spawn out of the same arc on the same planet. So, regardless of how many players come in on day one, we're all going to be stepping out into the same area. And where that kind of leads us is, we step out into the arc, everybody is all sharing the same resources, we all see the same land, And in a way, we're all kind of in the same boat. Like we all have to work together because as new players of the game, as the first people out there, there's not going to be anything for us. We effectively are going to be responsible for building civilization. And it may be like that for the first couple of months. We go out there, we have to mine everything. We have to build the major cities. We have to build the ships and the trade hubs. Like it's all going to be on the first players into the game. And where that gets kind of cool is that in the interview with Gamer Pros, the CEO of InQ or NovaCorp also touched on that, a couple of years into the game, 2 or 3 years after the game launches, the new players into the game may have a totally different new game experience. They may log into the game and they may see giant skyscraper cities and, massive trade hubs and spaceships landing and all sorts of, stuff happening. And their first steps in the game may actually be to go get a job and be part of the community or go join an organization so that they can be a pilot or a foot soldier or whatever, as opposed to people who start when the game launches. We aren't going to be the ones out there going to find jobs. We are going to be the ones out there like creating the organizations that fight over fight for territory for the next 3 years, such that 3 years down the line, players may be looking to join us.
Yes, um, I imagine that too, and I have regarding the topic for the first players, I have seen somewhere that the developers think that the first players actually need 1 to 1.5 years to get into space. So I hope when we if we work all together, we will cut this time to a shorter period.
Did you say 1.5 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna beat that. They'll never.
Yeah.
They'll never keep us down.
That's exciting though. I like that.
Yeah, 1.5 years, that sounds about right for a single player to get into space.
I mean, I don't know if you guys are watching this stream, but every now and then one of these screenshots of a forest will pop up. There's one playing right now.
I am indeed.
And you see how big the world actually is. Like, if you stepped off into the Ark and you were staring at a forest that big, and you knew it was going to take a couple of in-game days to travel across, a mountain range, there's a good chance players may have to spread around the world for the next year to actually find everything they need to get to space.
Yeah, easily. And I suppose this kind of goes along well with the idea of dual universe. The whole concept behind it is literally you build civilization. You are the ones who found everything. Instead of having any real predefined objects or anything, you're the ones who basically are meant to establish everything. Everything that is and can be in the universe. And so it just sort of goes along with the idea that we are the ones who are going to have to be creating jobs. We're the ones who are going to have to be founding everything. And in the end, it's really our responsibility to keep the game going.
I think a good analogy is like, I know a lot of people when they hear sandbox sci-fi games, I think one of the first games that comes to mind is going to be Star Wars Galaxies. And in a way, this is a lot like Star Wars Galaxies. Players have to go and build their cities. They have to build trade hubs. They have to work together as a community in order to be part of the sandbox world. And in traditional MMOs like World of Warcraft, or we'll just use that as the main example, players that join go looking for quests. They go and they kind of want a linear path. They go choose a quest. They go solve the finish the requirements for the quest, and then they get a reward for it. And it's back and forth with that. And in Star Wars Galaxies, my memory is not entirely clear about the game, but I remember having to use mission terminals, and you as a bounty hunter, you might get a mission to go assassinate a player or something, or as a trader, as like an architect in the game, you might get a mission to assemble something or gather certain materials. So the missions were, I think, still randomly generated or otherwise written by Sony. But that kind of leads into where Dual Universe's mission system might come into play, where missions are created by players. So if I'm an organization, I may put up a contract in a mission hub that says, I want 100 tons of iron, and I need 100 tons of iron delivered here. If you accept the contract, or if you're able to fulfill the contract, then you get the reward that I put up on that contract. And so otherwise, missions start to become more player run and player created, and organizations lead where new players go. So in a way, as the years go on, the dynamics of the game may change. The audience that comes in is going to look different, depending on how the world looks.
Heck yeah. The slums on Alioth, big signs that say all frostbacks and popsicles this way to my forced labor mine.
I'm gonna build those slums.
Yeah, I think the first years of the game will be more will be less players than probably expected. But as the in-game community grows and develops, there probably comes more traditional RPG players because the organizations have provided quests and such, and yeah, basically a storyline that traditional RPG players can follow.
Just talking about new players or just even a lot of players, and this affects everything about the game. One of the kind of side focuses is that we'll have multiplayer ships, multi-crew ships. So you might have a captain and a navigator, a gunner, or defense position. We don't know too much about individual positions, but multi-crew ships. So even somebody that's new, it won't take them long to catch up and be useful.
Absolutely. I think it would be exciting, 2 years into the game, 3 years into the game, for new players to come in and say, like, for them to go to a, quote, mission terminal and to see, just endless list of crews that they can join, because that there's always going to be a shortage of crew. If there's hundreds and thousands of multi-crew ships in the game, there are clearly more people that want to be pilots of ships than they want to be crew members. So there's always going to be room open somewhere for players to get in and join. Like, I want to be a gunner today as a new player. Maybe I want to work scanners or whatever.
Yeah. And that's something that's also kind of, I've thought personally as well. There's going to be a need for every single role, except for the ones that pretty much everyone wants to do, but not many people are going to be able to fulfill. So the fact is, how do you keep those people interested in that role? Well, in my imagination, you probably have to manage to either figure out a way to incorporate interesting game mechanics into that role. The game mechanics that are already pre-existing. You have to come up with a way to make that role interesting, or you just swap out roles, and people get a little bit of everything.
I guess on the topic of, organizations creating missions for players and kind of leading the quest direction, if I had a request, if that was actually the mechanic that made it into the game, because it's unclear if that will be what goes into the game, but if something like that made it in where organizations could make their own missions for players, I would like the ability to specify the requirements for being able to accept a mission. So like, if I have a mission, a bounty hunter mission, and I want somebody assassinated, I don't want just anybody to be able to pick up that contract. I want to be able to pick the best of the best. So for me to be able to say like, okay, I want somebody with a gunnery skill of so and so. Like they need to meet these minimum requirements before I allow them to accept the contract.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Another thing, assuming that that isn't going to be in game, we can hope that is. But if it isn't, there could also be networks actually created by players. You could have a bounty hunter network created by a player so that they literally keep track of the bounty hunters and bounties and give them to people who you specify. This goes along the lines of, creating your organizations and as such.
Yeah.
There was also an interesting topic about bounty hunting regarding Wuchers, or I don't know how to pronounce that. That the hunted player will drop uh, 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 after death.
Oh yeah, yeah. There was like a note or a contract suggestion where if you were a bounty hunter and you killed somebody, you may get some sort of like a certificate that guarantees that you killed somebody. What's the word that he used? Was it bond or you get some sort of item drop that signified the contract. And if somebody else killed you and took that contract, they could claim the reward.
And an opponent would could also be able to rob this from you.
Well, from what we were seeing on the forums is that they were one of the posts from the community manager was something about, if you were to die or were killed by PvP, some of those items, you would lose some of your items, but then the rest of them would kind of go into like something you could pick up once you respawn. Now, I'm not sure if they said anything about that being lootable, but I'm assuming that would be the way that they would acquire that item.
I think the reason why this was even brought up is because bounty hunting mechanics in games tend to lead to abuse, especially in EVE Online. Like bounty hunting in EVE Online is a joke because if you put $100 million bounty on somebody's head, what they're gonna 100 million is sorry. If you put a bounty that high or billion is or whatever on somebody's head, they're not just going to let anybody take that bounty. They're going to go find one of their friends to kill them so that they can take the bounty and then they'll split it. So the whole, bounty hunting system with contracts or otherwise items that you have to turn in to validate that you killed somebody kind of helps with that. Because if their friends go out and kill them to try to claim the bounty, they still have to turn in that bounty reward somewhere. And yeah, it's not just a simple method of, kill me so I can get rid of this bounty. And another good analogy is, I don't know if any of you ever played Grand Theft Auto 5 or Grand Theft Auto Online, but in Grand Theft Auto Online, you could put, hits out for people, and 99% of the time, just one of their friends would kill them and you would split the money.
That will probably come down to the community and just name recognition. like Master Dread was saying, a bounty hunter network, and players that are good bounty hunters will come to be known, and you might, as an organization, even offer out occasionally missions to that or a specific bounty hunter network to try to avoid the just having like a general bounty, like Eve style.
I mean, maybe even
I think a bounty hunter network would kind of be like a organization in the game. 'Cause it's kind of clear. I think it's pretty obvious you can join more than one organization because what an organization is kind of vague. Um, but it sounds like you'll be able to, have an organization for, a bank or your guild or your company or whatever. You'll be able to participate in several of them. And it sounds like the bounty hunting network would be an organization where, if you're a member of the organization, you get access to the missions that otherwise would be restricted to people who aren't in the organization.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to go for.
It could also be a matter of the visibility of the organization tags. So if you can see the tags of another player, it's fairly easy to identify a pirate or some sort of this.
Oh yeah, I think if you can scan down a player, if you can see a player, and you can pull up their character information, you should be able to see a list of the organizations they're in. Or, just playing devil's advocate here, you may want to make those things private. You may want to have like privacy settings on your account such that people can't just, dig into your whole background, which is kind of
Yeah,
the opposite of something like Eve.
yeah, I think that could also be a matter of technology, how many you could find out about the person with the person's personal scanner or some sort of this.
So you mean like a scanner where you could see if they're like an outlaw or something like that? But I mean that would make sense. Like if somebody's is a known bounty hunter or is a bounty hunter, and you can scan them and be like, oh shit, that bounty hunter's coming after me. Or I like that idea. Not so much though if you just scan like some random person who isn't a bounty hunter. Maybe all he's done is mining, and you wouldn't really necessarily have all of that information available. I wouldn't think, like which factions he's part of, because maybe that person is not very well known.
I think of this more as a technology for security guards that protect the city. For example, if you enter a city, you would go through a checkpoint, and there you would be scanned.
Ah, okay. Okay, so I mean that would make sense. Then it's basically like then you're able to see. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think I was thinking at it from a perspective of just some random person walking up and scanning another random person, really for no reason other than to see, um, what factions they're in.
That could also be a possibility, uh, but I think that it depends on how affordable the technology will be.
Well, on that note, I'm going to take us in a completely different direction. Um, we should probably hit up the AMA questions. And I guess I'll give a little bit of background as to why this forum post was created, and then we can hit up what the AMA questions were. I think NQ realized that after E3 there was a huge surge of interest in the game, clearly, and there was quite a bit of questions about the game that have come up recently, things that otherwise never showed up on the forums before. And certainly Nova Quark is happy about the attention that they're getting. But rather than, individually trying to dig into the forum post and, respond to every single question that shows up, what they decided to do was to do an AMA, which is not like the Reddit AMA. Instead, it's daily AMA. So there is a Q&A thread that is open on the forums, and anybody can post a question in the Q&A thread. And the idea is that every single business day, Monday through Friday, Nova Quark will pick one of the questions in that thread and answer them. And so with that bit of background information, Nova Quark has answered 3 questions so far for us, and ideally we'll have a lot more to cover during our next episode. But I'll let somebody else, pick up on that and to actually talk about the questions.
Well, Neo here. One of our first questions that they answered was how they intend to handle the large amount of information associated with hundreds or maybe even thousands of players morphing the environment and moving around all those voxels. And let's see here. The exact question from the community was, if one planet represents already trillions of voxels, how could a whole universe be stored on Nova Quark's servers? And our good friend Nizeltar, community manager, responds with, the trick is we don't store each voxel on the servers. Each planet is generated procedurally in real time by an algorithm when needed, when a player is approaching or on the planet. So a planet doesn't weigh anything down in terms of storage. This is exactly how it works in games like No Man's Sky, The Magic. Enabling devs to generate millions of planets without storing anything. Now, as we have editable planets, we go one step further. When a player edits something, we store just the modifications applied on the procedurally generated planet. That way, we optimize the storage space by keeping only modifications made by players. End. So that's going to be great for playability of the game. You won't just be lagging horribly by coming across the planet. Hopefully,
it kind of streamlines the load balancing of the game. If the game engine works the way that I'm envisioning it, and they're kind of breaking up. If they're breaking up the work that's required for running a player in an environment, and they're able to load balance that off to different servers and transfer work around, if the server cluster that you're assigned to for your local area is not powerful enough, they may seamlessly transfer that work to a larger or more powerful server cluster that is able to handle the work. It'd be otherwise invisible to you. But by reducing the amount of data that has to be transferred across the network in order for that work to go across, it otherwise makes it more seamless. You don't. If you're standing on a mountain that is being mined out, and the engine determines that the server that you're on is not powerful enough to run all the players that are in the area or close to you. It may otherwise require a new server to be spun up, or a different node in the network to take over the work. And so you would transfer just the changes in the terrain, otherwise these small bits of data, over to the new network node, and then transfer your player information, etc. Basically, all the engine work and all the I don't know a good way of putting it.
So it basically reduces some of the stress from having to create these planets and store these planets, and lets it focus on other things like worrying about where the players are.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, that is not a topic that we can dig into very far, since we are clearly not working on the engine. But it's little bits of information like that that help us think about, the bigger picture.
Well, and it does help with understanding, because there's some people out there that are really skeptical about how something like this game could work. And, this, it basically is kind of letting them know that, they're taking care of the planets kind of the same way that No Man's Sky does. They make it so they're stored very tiny, as kind of like an algorithm or a seed. And then when you get close enough, it pulls it up with any of the edited changes on it also popping up. So it lets them know that, hey, this is something that is manageable, it is accomplishable, and it lets, because we can make this as compact as possible, we can spend more time and more server resources focusing on how to make players interact with each other.
Right. Well, unfortunately, that was not the most exciting answer or question or Q&A question.
I suppose I'll read
once-
the next one.
Yeah, you can hit up the next one.
Well, not that interesting, but still good. Q&A 2, Thursday, 30th of June, 2016. The quote is, "Planet showed in the E3 teaser looked like height maps. Do you plan on making stuff like caverns and arches? How far can we dig How far can we dig the ground?" Yeah, that grammar doesn't help. Indeed, the procedural generation algorithm used to make our first planets did the same thing that could be done with height maps. However, we are looking into making 3D procedural generation, meaning caverns and similar things. As you can imagine, R&D is far from being finished in this domain. This is work in progress. As for the max depth you will be able to dig underground, the exact limit hasn't been defined yet. We are aiming at a few kilometers. The final decision may be tied to the technical performances. Beyond that, let's say the temperature will start to raise too high to be a viable environment. End of thread.
So I'm particularly excited about this, mostly because it was, because it was talking about how far you can dig into the ground. And I think this is kind of one of my favorite things to do, or one of the topics that I like is kind of how far down can you go, because I want to build an underground base. I want to work primarily underground. I don't really have any desire to be above ground for much of anything. So how far can I go is definitely a really, something I was interested in. And some people may not be thinking that a few kilometers is any great distance, but I mean, if you fell from a few kilometers, you would think it was definitely a great distance. I like that.
Also,
oh, go ahead.
To just to hit up on the QA that I mentioned earlier, Q&A, the CEO did mention that the arcs were supposed to have a safe zone of, roughly 20 kilometers around them. So if you're able to dig a few kilometers down, like, distance must be huge in the game. That's got to be a lot.
Alien Paragon chimed in over there about the planets.
I think the main question regarding the topic of how deep can you get is there a hard-coded limit that's explained with heat, or is there actual heat that prevents you from going deeper?
Well, I think what they're saying in here is that they really haven't defined it yet, since they're still figuring out how far or how much of the edited changes they can kind of store. I mean, at least from what it looked like in the answer.
I think the R&D stuff, and I apologize to NovaCorp if they're listening to this, but I totally dug into your LinkedIn, so when you guys say things like R&D, I know who it is that's working on that. But yeah, I think that the job that R&D was assigned has to do with things like procedural generation for caves. I don't know if anybody remembers when Minecraft first came out, but I don't think there were caves in the first couple of versions of Minecraft.
Nope.
So I think that's the work that they're talking about there. But also, in the answer he gave, he says, beyond that, let's say the temperature will start to raise too high to be a viable environment. What that means to me is that the further you go down, the warmer it's going to be. And there will be a point, at which you're down there and you're going to have to make the decision, do I need to be down here mining materials, or um, should I go up to the surface? Like, the longer I spend down here, the more damage or more health effects that I'm going to suffer for being down here. However, there's the reward of, there's possibly rare materials down here, so maybe I want to be down here longer. Um, and that also goes into things like, do I need better armor? Do I need special equipment to be able to be down deeper? It may be that the equipment is not going to keep me alive forever, so it's not a viable environment to live in. But otherwise, it's not so insanely harsh that it's impossible to go down to deeper depths. That's just the way I read the question.
And then there's one more Q&A.
I think you can do us the honors.
Okay. Well, it doesn't go on much about the actual in-game details, but more about the community. So Q&A 3, Friday the 1st, July 2016, quote, is there any more information available about the new community site that was mentioned at E3? Can we get a subform for fan art / fanfiction / etc.? And Nazaltar goes on to say this. The wait will soon be over as the community website will be released next week, so I'm assuming Monday or somewhere around there. He goes on to say, the reason for which we haven't already created a subforum for fan art, fanfiction, and other player-created content is because we believe it will be more appropriate if all the content created by the community is gathered in one place. Fan art, fanfiction, and later screenshots, videos, or even advertisements for your own created content in-game. With the player-created content gathered in one place designed specifically for that, it'll be easier for someone who wants to know more about what you to do to find your profile and look at your creations in a few clicks. Plus, such websites will give opportunity to put a spotlight on most popular player creations. Spotlight will change regularly, of course. The website that will be released next week will have features we considered at the most essential. Of course, it doesn't mean that this will be the final version. We already have a few additional features in mind for the future. And as always, we will listen to our feedback and improve it. End of post.
I'm actually most excited by this one because it will literally be the first product that we are getting from NovaCorp. Like we haven't been given anything from them. We got the forums. That's it. We've gotten screenshots, et cetera, et cetera. But this is going to be the first product that we are going to be able to get our hands on. I'm not going to say it's going to like make or break our opinion of NovaCorp, but we're going to be able to see the kind of work that they're able to put out. I mean, in theory, they've been working on this site for a while now.
So the main question for me at this topic is how important will this community site be for organizations? Because I'm struggling at the moment. Will I need a website for my organization, or will there be something provided by NGO?
I think both. I think that any organization is of sufficient size is going to have its own community outside of the tools provided to us from NovaCorp. I mean, like, look at EVE Online. Like, certainly there's enough tools in the game, and EVE provided tools that make it viable to have a community. But I don't think there's any EVE Online Corp that doesn't have its own tools to use outside of the game. Like Goonswarm came from the Something Awful forums. You have Dreadit and Test Alliance that came from Reddit. Wildly Inappropriate. I mean, all of these places all have their own forums and their own communication places.
I know means Neapolitan, Neapolitan, have actually been looking. Your name's a bit difficult, just. But
Call him Safi.
Yes, well, you're not going to escape your former name. Safi it is. But me and Safi have been looking forward to the community website for a while now. But I still have founded my own faction website for the DOA just because it's good to already have it planned out, and I've already found ways to use it outside of the forums for organization as such. So tools outside of just what NovaCorp will provide us is obviously going to be something. It already is.
I'm interested to see how integrated the website is going to be with the game. Like, if I make an organization using the community website, is that going to translate into the game too? Or am I going to have to, when the game launches, am I going to have to go make the organization all over again?
Copy paste.
I think it makes the most sense to link them.
I haven't a clue. I think that this is intended to give us an idea of how organization building will be, and probably to sketch out, an alpha version of probably what they have in mind, and then yes, we'll probably have to convert that into the actual game later, unless they work up some magic to take it from the community site to in-game.
If you watch the E3 presentation, when the CEO was doing a quick Q&A with the interviewer up there, he talked about the community site. He said, in a couple of weeks, we're going to be bringing this site where players can create their characters and their guilds and manage the organizations and, whatever they want like that. And I'm interested to see what the character creator actually will look like. Like, are we just going to be able to make a bio for ourselves, or is there actually going to be a character creator?
Well, we're all starting off in suits. I don't think we touched on the character creation before, but we'll all be in survival arc ship suits.
We'll kind of look like Power Rangers.
I'm all for that.
Hey, I like the nanomorpher. I mean, I don't know what all colors it can be, but in the images that they have, it looks like orange and yellow is like going to be the hot color.
Yeah. I know that one of the things I want to do is I want to create a in-game religion, but I don't know how that fits into an organization structure.
Oh yeah, that one.
Hey, we just make a theocracy, and you purge.
It's got to be like the necromongers, you keep what you kill. So yeah, I think that we hit up a lot of good points and everything. Is there anything anybody else wants to touch on? It's not like we're on any time constraints here.
I wanted to touch the markets, or the economy, or however you want to call it. Especially in the current topic in the forum that regards NPCs, where suggested NPC shopkeepers, and yeah, you had the point of EverQuest 1999 or what this was, and it's a really interesting idea, I think. Yeah.
I think the way to approach this one is for those of you watching the stream, because we have a couple of viewers now, to give it a little bit of background about this. The question of NPCs came up in the forums this week is, if there will be NPCs in the game and if they're going to be player controlled, and specifically in the topic of markets. Like if I own a store, is the storefront going to be able to be managed by an NPC? And then there was some debate in the forums as whether we should have NPCs in the game doing that, or whether there should be just computer terminals where you can browse through something and get whatever you need. And there was back and forth on that. And I brought up the history of EverQuest, which was way back in the beginning of EverQuest. There was no market. There was no auction channel. There was no auction chat room. There was nowhere to go to do that. And effectively, the way that people traded in the game was you would travel around and you would basically just sit in a popular area of town and hope that somebody walking by would see you broadcasting in chat. And they would come check out your wares and you would sell it to them. And, it was a very personal thing. Like you had to travel with your goods across the world and, actually work like a trader going around and getting the things that people wanted. And eventually there were two brothers in the game that went around. And one day they told everybody, like, hey, we're going to be at the East Common Land Tunnels on this day at this time. Come see what we have. And it turned out to be a huge success. Like tons of people showed up. And they started doing that, every week until they showed up one week and there were already people there. And what ended up happening was that the East Common Land Tunnels became the trading zone. Like, to this day, you can walk around in EverQuest 1999, and there are people just packed in that tunnel doing nothing but trading stuff all day. But I guess the point I'm trying to get at here is that trading in the game was much more personal. Like you actually had to go and work, face to face with another player to get something that you needed. And in the realm of like NPCs and markets, that kind of plays in here too. Like, should you just be able to see a computer screen and browse through all the wares that a store has, or should players like have to stand there, or should there be NPCs that are a little more personal in the way they communicate with players than just a computer terminal? I think one way that this may be approached, just hypothetically, is that if it's going to take us a year to get to space, it's probably going to take us a while to get all the materials we need to make computer terminals, to make markets and trading stations. And so in the beginning of the game, it may very well be that trading is done like on a first person basis. Like you have to go find the person you need. But I don't know. That's hypothetical.
Yeah, thank you that you had this all put in a nutshell. Yeah, I was thinking that it would kind of nice of an idea if you have market days in a huge city where all the small communities around this large city will come together and trade. But I think there should also be small stores around, maybe with hardcore role players who are dedicated shopkeepers. I think that it would have its own charm, and maybe even with should we have a in-game voice chat like in Arma 3? It's this immersion. I imagine it's incredible.
I imagine like a giant capital ship. And when I say that, I imagine something like Knights of Sidonia. I don't know if anybody's ever seen that show. But I imagine like a ton of people living in a giant ship and that being their home. And if you want something, there's going to be somebody in the game who's a cook, like on the ship, and that's what they like doing. They like taking food and cooking it and processing it, and then either they can run a store themselves and just, I want to run a little restaurant on the ship. That's what I want to do in the game. Is I just want to sit there and run a restaurant and be like the guy that takes orders, and that's how I want to play my game. Um, and on the other side, there's going to be people who absolutely don't want to do that. And even so far as like they don't want to have to interact with another player, which I will never understand the people that subscribe to an MMO to never interact with somebody else. Um, kind of leads into like where I left that forum post, which was I think that Nova Corp, if they're making an MMO, should in their game design decisions do things that lead more towards player interaction versus doing things on your own. I don't like the idea of somebody subscribing to Dual Universe and just running off and being able to do everything on their own, like building space stations and spaceships on their own. At least not in any realistic amount of time. I like the idea of players having to interact with other people, like having to go find somebody to trade with, having to make face-to-face interactions with other players. Maybe that's just me.
Alien Paragon brings up a good point over there. A game like No Man's Sky, where why did they even put the effort in to make it multiplayer when they make it so painful to play with other people? So on the flip side of that, it's great that Dual Universe is a game about bringing lots of people together instead of putting people on far-flung ends of the galaxy, rolling the dice.
There's definitely going to be a mix of both types of players. There's going to be people who hate the role players. Like I kind of keep making analogies to Eve, but there's definitely a small group of players in Eve who like to role play in Eve. And just like in any MMO, some MMOs are more conducive to role playing than others. Like Final Fantasy XIV has a huge role playing subculture in it, and so does Lord of the Rings Online. Also has a huge role playing subculture. I think that a sandbox game like Dual Universe is conducive to role playing, but of course there's always going to be the players who want nothing to do with any of that and who actually despise the role players.
I suppose
so, of
that
course,
just
there's
goes with
balance.
their community.
Yeah. A lot of the times, role players are left just, being creative with the tools that they're given. Certainly, Final Fantasy XIV doesn't have like role playing utilities inside of it, but people just play within the characters that they have. There's some role playing communities. I was part of one of Final Fantasy XIV where they were I can't remember exactly what they were role playing. I think it was like Battlestar Galactica or something. Like it was weird how they were able to role play something that had nothing to do with Final Fantasy XIV inside of Final Fantasy XIV.
The role playing communities are crazy strong. Like once even if you have a couple people that are really serious about it, I mean it can be really fun, especially if you get into it. If you're not that into it, then you probably should avoid it and just play the game how you want to.
Like my idea for a player run religion or an RP religion in the game certainly has a lot of requirements for role playing. Like certainly there's not going to be mechanics in the game that allow for player run religion. So that's 100% a role playing type thing, where everything that the religion does is all RP based. But I think that there's the potential for RP to turn into effects for the rest of the game. Like hypothetically speaking, if there was a big player religion in the game, like the Roman Empire in the game, and we were launching a crusade war against some other religion or some other planet that claims their own religion, the effects of the role playing in the game, like if there were hundreds of people involved in such a crusade or war or whatever, the effects of that battle may be felt by people who don't role play at all. Like if we put on a trade blockade to prevent any imports from getting to a planet only because we don't like the religion they follow, um, people who don't role play or care about the religion aspects at all are still going to be affected by that trade blockade.
Just like in real world or in real life. There are, in real life are certainly people that don't care about religion and are also affected by religious aspects.
Yeah. I mean, you hit the nail on the head completely. You know, there's people who are atheists who are still affected in their day-to-day lives by religion. You know, on a global scale, we're affected by these things. It would make sense that it would happen in the game too. Just to leave on a note on that, like, I think that if someone makes a player-made religion in the game, it should probably not mirror a real-world religion because there's going to be all sorts of
Yeah, that's not a good idea.
issues.
Well, you could use the religion of the Seven from Game of Thrones or something. I mean, if you're going to be crazy, you could.
Actually, that's a pretty good idea.
As long no one is going to make Abrahamic religions a thing in dual universe, I am totally fine with that.
For everybody watching, for all 5 people watching, my idea for a religion, it's kind of vague, so I haven't kind of fleshed it out, but I know that one of the main concepts of the religion depends on a game mechanic that was touched on during an interview, and this has to do with Stargates. Without getting into the mechanics of how Stargates work, we were told that in order to create a Stargate, you know, players might have to create a probe, build a probe, and then send that probe across space, traveling faster than light, to reach its destination. You know, a star, probably a star or a planet or something. But anyways, this probe travels, and it'll travel in real time, so that you might have to wait 4 or 5 real months for that probe to reach its destination. At that point, you may be able to warp in some of your ships into the probe beacon, like make a jump, and then from there, you would construct the other side of the Stargate so that you could connect your 2 Stargates. And my question is, instead of sending a probe, can we send players? Can I create Can I create a giant ship, you know, for 100 people, and then for 100 people to sit in that ship for the next 4 or 5 months while we do nothing but travel through space to our destination? And that plays into my religion idea, because I want for the priest of my religion to have to go through that initiation. Like, if you want to be a priest or bishop or whatever in the player game religion, you have to sit on a ship for 4 or 5 months to make the pilgrimage.
I think it will really depend on the fact if you are able to keep the crew busy.
Yeah.
I think it would kind of be forced RP. I think if you are stuck on a ship, you're not going to be able to do much but RP.
Or, you know, drop out.
Or
kill themselves.
Or not log in for 4 or 5 months.
That last one doesn't sound like such a great idea.
Unless you really just don't care about the game.
Was it you that said that you would make an alternate account to do it? Somebody said that they would make an alt account just to sit on the ship.
I don't think that was me.
So,
I mean, it's a sacrifice to sit on a ship like that. That's a character that's not going to level up for 4 or 5 months.
are you just gonna like, bring down your cathedral ship next to the arc ship and kind of like herd the sheep into the ship and be like, hey, we're going to a great place, free stuff. And you just get a couple hundred people in there, and you have like an altar with 5 daggers, and whoever comes out on top.
I've got some rare shit back here. Like,
Yep, totally not kidnapping these people. You pay
last
no
one alive
attention
gets
to
a
this.
spaceship.
I mean, 4 or 5 months are enough time to brainwash someone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey guys, we got some custom players over here.
Yamamushi the Great. He took us to the promised land.
Some
Oh,
of us
hey,
didn't make it though.
Yamamushi.
So I was looking right now at the chat, and I see that there's one of the comments in there was saying something about, well, actually, just direct comment, atmospheric. Hopefully, they find a good balance of difficulty and duel. I think the harder a game is, the more it brings people together and makes them want to role play against the game. So I think if you make it to the point where it's difficult, really difficult to survive on your own, I mean, those first couple days outside of the safe zone, it would make it so people are more likely to come together. Basically, as they say later on as well, sort of like the way people are nice to each other during a real bad storm or a really bad tragic event. And I'm not sure, how hard the game would have to be to get people to do that, but I think most people or at least the people that I've talked to in the forums are going to be pretty inclined to work together anyway. But I think that would help bring people together who are less inclined to help each other.
Here's my theory of what's going to happen. I think that, if it takes a year to get into space or however long, you're going to end up with a ton of player organizations at first. Everybody wants to get into space. And then what will end up happening is eventually they'll all just kind of merge together with the same goal of like, hey, if we work together, we can all get to space. And you'll end up with one giant conglomerate group organization that runs the planet. And then as they control like everything going on for a couple of months, people will start to revolt. So you'll have like, the state-run monopoly corporation, and then you'll have like, rebels that are trying to revolt against them and, trying to steal spaceships and go to war with them. And they'll be the little guys versus the, monolithic corporation.
Filthy frostbacks try and revolt.
Yeah, the Empires can survive this time, boys.
Well, I mean, especially if it plays out, like it should have, which is that, 15 people come up against a huge empire and then, they just get shot down and swatted like flies.
and punished to no end.
The rebels will be fighting us with strategy, and we'll be fighting them with pony walkers that shoot, lasers out of their unicorn. I don't know who will win, but I think we definitely got them beaten cool factor. People will remember the Empire.
If they get hit with that unicorn laser, it's going to shame them into quitting. It's like, how did you lose? I got hit by a unicorn laser. It was rainbow colored.
And I really hope the game like has gears and pistons and otherwise joints that are controlled with Lua. Because I know for a fact, if you have joints in the game because you're using Unigine physics as system, and the joints are controllable with Lua, it's only a matter of time before you see mechs.
Yep.
I would also should suggest miniature miniature unicorns as infantry weapons that poop rainbows.
Nice, yeah. So little tiny unicorns instead of giant ones, so nobody will see them coming.
I foresee battles in the game with giant mechs being flown in and dropped, kind of like a Pacific Rim, and you'll just see like mechs duking it out in the middle of player-built cities and like Godzilla. And they'll just wreak
Basically,
havoc on everything.
Titanfall.
It's fine.
Yeah, like Titanfall.
Yep. Yeah, people will come up with some crazy stuff. That's always guaranteed in a game.
Well, anybody has any more topics to bring up? By all means, we're on no time constraints.
Well, I suppose we can get to the point of, well, we've already discussed civilizations, corporations, organizations. I suppose we suggest, really, how people sort of colonize other planets. Because that's a fact that we can kind of make guesses at.
The first planet, my guess, is going to be the most difficult. But once we make it off the planet, the rest of the world, the rest of the universe is going to seem smaller. Like when we're able to fly around a planet instead of spending hours walking, things go by much faster.
As I think about colonization, the main question would be how many people would volunteer to get on a new planet.
Hmm.
Oh, I'm sure that people will be crawling all over each other to try to get on the first spaceship that's built.
Oh
Kind
yeah,
of
we're
like
going
the
to a new
Arships.
planet. We're definitely not going to the sun.
We don't have to tell them that.
That's
Just
That's
automate
your,
the rocket with Lua.
that's your secondary ship for the punished.
You
Those are for
know,
the people that made it through the first trial.
that makes
Or the
me
ones who didn't.
wonder. I assume you're inferring heat damage or something.
Yeah.
If you just, before space travel's even done, and you just trick people into thinking it's a spaceship, and then actually fly down a deep hole and park down in the ambient area of heat damage, if that's going to be a thing.
There's no windows in this spaceship.
Or you could just set you could set the ship to explode on countdown.
Oh, you thought we were going up? No, we're going down.
We're not going anywhere.
No, we're going every single direction possible here. But actually, that reminded me of something. I know in a lot of games, including Mass Effect, Eve. Well, I believe it was Eve. Some of the ways to track ships is actually heat, due to space being absolute zero and no heat. Actually, be able to be transferred. Heat can build up very easily. So, what about systems for managing that, and also systems for managing it and preventing you from getting tracked because of your heat signature?
Yeah, heat being kind of a cloak, an infrared cloak.
Well, I mean, I think what you're saying is basically like if you're, because space is no temperature essentially, or if you're moving in a ship, it's generating heat, so it's easily trackable essentially. And I think, I mean, there may be ways to cloak that, but the only one that I can think of that I would probably use is just, I mean, powering down certain things on the ship, or if you could even do that, that would be kind of cool. Almost like with oh crap, Elite Dangerous, how you could shut off shields and certain things like that to reduce the heat signature on your ship.
Or alternatively, max out your reactor output so that it goes critical, and then use your ship as a giant bomb.
That's something they could definitely do.
That sounds a lot like more of the religion you were talking about.
Everything we have just goes
Lots of
back to your punishment.
Lots of religion and explosions. I don't know where this is going.
You have mentioned Mass Effect, and in Mass Effect you have the Normandy, and this is a good example for. I mean, the Normandy has an cloaking system, and the Normandy is using an internal heat capacitor. Storage unit type thing that is able to consume the heat that that the ship is producing, but only over a certain amount of time.
Yeah, I remember that being one of the points of the game. And so it's very possible, if Novacorp does take that into consideration, which it would be so great if they did, that you could have heat conduits, heat storage facility, heat storage tanks, and all that to kind of manage your heat output and see how long you can sustain yourself until you could properly vent it off.
Or even use that to actually power some of the things inside the ship. I mean, it's not going to be a huge part of power output, but I mean, you could still use that. And I think that'd be kind of cool.
Maybe emergency
That reminds
power.
me a lot of. Sorry.
Oh no, I'm just thinking maybe it would work as emergency power. Who knows?
It kind of reminds me a lot of Space Station 13. Like, the amount of detail that's in Space Station 13, I think InQ should definitely take notice of. Like, everything. If you ever play Space Station 13, you'll walk around and you'll notice there's tons of components everywhere, like computers and air vents and computer terminals and all sorts of machines and vending machines and lights, and you name it, it's probably in the game. And the thing with all of those pieces of equipment is that they all need power. And power in the game is not some magic invisible force that like suddenly just powers up whatever. Every electrical component in Space Station 13 has wires running to it. And all of those wires run to power conduits, which then eventually run to the reactor. And so like if you were a trader on the station and you cut a wire, you may be able to cut off, power for a whole section of the station. Or alternatively, like all the air vents are all hooked up to a central air circulation system, and all of that is all player controlled, where like you can pump in, clean air or pump in toxic air into environments, and just the amount of detail in the game is insane. But I think that in Space Station 13, that kind of stuff can definitely be useful. Like, imagine Dual Universe. Imagine if in Dual Universe, if you were building a capital ship, if you had to hire electricians to come wire up all your components up strategically, like there would be people who like doing that, just like there's people in Minecraft who like making redstone stuff, and you'll have people who specialize in doing that.
I remember just something regarding heat or temperature in space. You have it's a balance that you must maintain. You have also the need to heat your electronic components so that they can work properly. it's something that is it's a problem that has NASA to fight even today. And in the book The Martian, it's also mentioned that the probe that the main character is retrieving has heat coils.
I think all that kind of stuff, I think, would add to the game. I don't think that kind of stuff is now. There's going to be people who would argue otherwise, but I think that kind of stuff just adds to the depth of the game rather than makes it more difficult to play.
Only if you are kind of doing it all yourself would be extremely difficult.
Well, and that would encourage people to work together.
Yeah.
And, I mean, essentially, it would be that would kind of be what they were talking about, or some of the people that were posting on Twitch here, what they were talking about, making it difficult to kind of do this by yourself, so that you want to work together with other people to make the best things you can make, or to accomplish great things.
And like you shouldn't have to work with somebody to do everything in the game, but certainly if you want to progress to a certain point, you should have
to. Yes. I have this. As basically for my faction, I imagine build teams that consist out of the different kinds of careers. You have designers, builders, engineers, electricians, and basically everything you can imagine of what a ship or a building would need. And I imagine that you would be able with certain organizations to have the teams that are trained in working together, and that would be also a great point of the game. I think, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, same thing I thought about with DUA is having separate teams, that maybe even educational teams that help inform people of what to do in specific things, how this works, how that works, all that.
You also have to take it into perspective of like that whole thing about players who play several years later or even months later. Everybody's going to have a different starting experience. So, at different stages in the game, players are going to be organized around doing different things. Like certainly in the beginning, there's going to be players who have to mine. There's going to be players who have to build buildings, and like they're not going to be able to just make spaceships. That's not going to be the focus of the game at first. It's going to be survival and working together and building cities and et cetera, expanding out from the Ark ship. But maybe a year into the game, you may be able to focus on building ships, and so it kind of changes the dynamic of being able to train people and making organizations like that. Like the focus of everything just will change over time.
Yeah, like
heck, we may come up with colleges.
Yeah, definitely. And it may it may come out to, like, if you have somebody joining a year later or even a couple months later, instead of having to focus on building their own ship, they can focus on getting enough money to buy one, so that they could do little odd jobs and stuff, or find other ways to make money in order to just purchase a ship without having to focus on building it, or know somebody who knows how to build it. They can just have the money to buy one, which when you're first starting the game, probably not going to be an option.
Or somebody may even just give them a ship, like, hey, we have a carrier here that has a ton of fighter ships, but we don't have anybody to sit in the seats. Like, we need pilots. Like, do you want to jump in the game and be a pilot for us? By all means. And I think there will be an opportunity for people to do whatever they want.
Here I think we have also to take in account the blueprint system. You don't necessarily need to buy a ship. You could also simply buy a blueprint and gather the resources to build it yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's if you want to take the time to gather those resources yourself. But yeah, no, it's definitely, they'll have options. Yeah, like you're saying, good point with the blueprint. Because yeah, they could either just buy a ship or buy the blueprint if they feel like being a little more creative.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about play organizations and working together. I know that in the end, my ultimate goal is just to sit inside a giant freighter and fly for hours doing nothing but like listening to the music and just flying cargo back and forth as a space trucker.
That's a good goal. I don't have any goals nearly as defined as that yet. I'm just gonna dig a shit ton of holes all over the place. I'm really not joking. I'm gonna do that. I think in as many places as I can.
Yeah, I can't wait to see like the mechanics of how we're going to be able to scan for ore and whatnot. Like, is it going to look like Empyrean, or is it going to be more in depth where like you actually have to set up some sort of scanner, build a scanner that does some sonar under the ground, or what? Who knows?
I find it funny. You have already to deal with one of the members of the Terran Union who is fearing your hole digging.
Well, I guess on that note, since we're approaching the 2 hour mark, I think we'll go ahead and call it the end of the show right now. I think next week ours will be more streamlined and probably much shorter, but we'll have at
A
least
bit more
5 new
coordinated.
topics to cover. And we'll also be able to do a review of the community site, which I'm excited about.
Indeed, unless they decide to well, actually, this is a Saturday, so it works out perfectly.
So basically, yeah, we thanks for listening to us while we get our shit together.
Yep. I suppose we'll go with that. All right. Let's see. I suppose we'll just say our names again and decide to leave.
Start from the top.
So that would be you, Darius.
Well,
We're basically just saying who we are and then signing out, man.
yeah. Then the leader of the Terran Union, Darius Sanguininato, says goodbye.
I'm Master Dreadstone. And once again, leader of the DOA, Diversity Unified Lines. I bid you all farewell.
Neapolitan. I'm going to sign out. Not Safi anymore. It's Neapolitan. Thank you. Just community leader, bunch of nerds. So thanks for listening.
All right, Scruggs, General Nobody. See you later.
Cool. And Yamamushi. And I'll be on the forums.
Thanks for watching, everyone.